Hey guys, I decided to take another risk on this one. I know I said I was gonna take a break from doing videos, but I just couldn't resist seeing this opportunity. I love horror games, as you probably know. So I decided maybe Little Nightmares 2 will be better than the first one. Which the first one was fine, it wasn't a bad game by any stretch, but I wasn't particularly impressed. So, how's the sequel? Well, it's definitely better, but how much better? Because truth be told, if you played the first one, you already know what to expect here. It's another puzzle platformer with horror elements. Emphasis on puzzles. If you want a good breakdown on essentially what this game is, it's basically 60% puzzles, 20% platforming, 20% horror. Which, if you're making a horror game, you should probably have more horror than that, honestly. I just think eventually the puzzles are going to take away from the experience. I mean, obviously puzzles have been a part of horror since basically the very beginning, going all the way back to Alone in the Dark for PC, you know? And obviously the classic Resident Evil games, Silent Hill, they've all got puzzles, right? But those puzzles were used as a brief relief from the horror experience. And the action sections, which would likely get boring if that was all there was to the game, right? And so obviously puzzles have a place in horror, but they shouldn't be the majority of the game. But that being said, if you like the first one and you want more of that, that's essentially what this is. But if you haven't played the first one, Little Nightmares 2 is a perfect place to start. You honestly don't need to play the first game at all, though if you have played the first game, the ending will make a lot more sense. But really the rest of the game, there's not much in common. This is a slight spoiler, but it's been marketed, so it's not really a spoiler. Raincoat Kid, or Six, from the first game, is your partner in this one. As you play as Mono, which is a new kid, and you team up with Six early on to solve these, essentially, they're almost like co-op puzzles without co-op, right? And that in itself doesn't really add much to the puzzles in these games, I'm gonna be honest. Because, you know, the AI just does what it's supposed to do. You don't really tell it what to do. There's a couple times where you have to call him with triangle to get him to move to your position to do whatever it is he's supposed to do. But for the most part, it doesn't really change the puzzles up very much. But it does build up a camaraderie between the two of them, which obviously is important in what little story there is. Because honestly, the most interesting part of Little Nightmares, and always was in the first game as well, is the world itself, which is some strange reflection of our own, with very uncanny valley monsters as people. You know, they all look like puppets or porcelain dolls or these strange contorted, you know, disgusting figures. And while I'd say in the first game, the uncanniness wasn't handled all that well. Personally, I just didn't think it was that scary. They looked more goofy than scary to me. In this one, they did correct that. And part of that is just based on the things I'm afraid of, right? I just think porcelain dolls are kind of creepy anyway. And the teacher in this game is just terrifying. Her neck just stretches infinitely. And it's disturbing. And also there's a hospital level, and in the hospital level there's a bunch of mannequins, and the only way to stop the mannequins is to flash your flashlight at them. So it's a little bit like SCP-173, you know, you've got to look at them to make them stop, or they chase you, right? So I thought that was pretty fun. Mannequins creep me out. The rest of the monsters, not so much though. This ties back into the whole dark reflection of our world part, but this whole world is kind of like decaying over time, and part of that is from these TVs that all of these citizens are glued to, and it's deformed their face pretty much. It like melted it inward, which is a nice little artistic design there. But yeah, essentially you have to go shut down that signal. I don't really know if the characters are actually actively trying to go to that tower or not. Like, the story in this is pretty vague, but of course you end up at the tower at the end. That's not really a spoiler. It's obviously heavily foreshadowed. But the TV monster, which is essentially Slender Man or the Thin Man legend or one of those, that type of thing's just not scary because Slender Man's been used to death, you know? He just looks too similar. Tall, skinny dude in a suit. You know, that's just not a scary concept anymore. We've seen it too often. Mechanically, this is also pretty similar to the first game. You can run, jump, climb things, grab objects, throw objects. That's pretty much it. The only new mechanics are, one, like I said before, you can call over 6 to your position. You get a flashlight at one point for the mannequins. And near the end of the game, you get a TV remote that can turn on and turn off the TVs. But that's pretty much it. That's all you can do. And I think that's part of the problem with the game, is that as far as sequels go, it plays it a little bit too safe. It's just too similar. And while I think the actual budget has been increased because Tarsian Studios was bought out, so they're not really indie anymore. So what this means is, I guess, they have more employees, bigger budget, you know, that type of thing. I just don't think it was spent in the right place. While I think the game has a great horror atmosphere, you know, from a game perspective, it's very, very similar to the first one. My main complaint with the game is that there are these chase sequences, right? It's basically one of the main types of gameplay you see here. You got puzzles, you got hide and seek sections, which in itself is almost like a puzzle with these monsters as you try to sneak past them. And then eventually they find you, and then there's a chase sequence. And the entire game is essentially a cycle between those 3 gameplay styles. The problem is, for how many chase sequences there are, they're way too unforgiving. If you make one slight mistake, you die, and especially in the late game. So it has very much a trial and error gameplay to it, which is not all that bad because there are a lot of checkpoints. But in some of the longer chase sequences, you go all the way back to the beginning, and it just gets annoying, and it feels inconsistent as well. And it's hard to describe exactly why. It's just too many animations have like a long recovery time, like jumping or sliding. Sliding especially just feels almost worthless. But really, it's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, because there's no consequences for death. Other than that, I just wasn't all that overly impressed by the game. I want a game that tries to scare me. And it's really been a long time since I can say I was legitimately scared by a horror game. And part of it is I'm just too desensitized, you know? It takes something that is really dedicated to fear to get me, like Amnesia: The Dark Descent. That I'm still gonna keep bringing up Amnesia. The first Amnesia is so fucking good. So yeah, but obviously Little Nightmares isn't really going for that style. This is the type of horror game that anybody could finish, really. Maybe somebody out there will be too scared to finish the game, probably a kid or something. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're easily scared by horror games, you'll probably be just fine with this one, if you just want a little bit of a fear factor in there. But for anybody like me, who's really looking for a hardcore scary experience, we're gonna have to keep looking. I'm definitely open to suggestions if you guys have played any. So long story short, you're looking at a $30 game that's only 6 to 7 hours long, is mostly puzzles with a bit of platforming, not all that many scare sections or chase sequences or things like that. So it's really up to you if that's worth it to you. To me, no, not for 30. Not even for 20, really. I would have purchased this at $15 normally. At the time of me recording this, the Lunar sale's going on, so you could go ahead and try the first game for pretty cheap if you want to see if you'd like this one. Because trust me, yeah, they're pretty similar games. But yeah, this one is scarier. The level design overall is a bit more interesting. But this is probably one you're going to want to wait for a sale. I just can't see this being worth half a full price game. Let's hope if they make a third game, they try to expand upon the mechanics in this one, because that's really all this game needs. It just needs more complexity and a bit more creativity with the design, because they've nailed the atmosphere they're going for pretty well. Now just up the fear factor and add more creative level design and puzzles and mechanics. Just expand on it. Alright guys, I know I said I was going to take a break from videos for a bit, but I couldn't resist taking up the opportunity to do this. It's very rare that I just see a game as it releases. There was literally no user reviews yet on Steam when I downloaded this. So I'm like, you know, now's my chance, right? So hopefully this pays off. Hope some new viewers see this. Check out some of my other content. Thanks for watching. You know, do the things the algorithm likes, I guess. Usually I say that at the beginning. Oh well. And yeah, you know, Far Cry 1 will probably come out next Friday. And I've definitely got to start playing Witcher 1, because that doesn't give me a whole lot of time, because I'm sure it's got at least 30 hours, if not 40 or more hours of content. So I got to get on that. And after that, yeah, I might take a break. Though somewhere in there, I'm going to do my 10,000 subs special live stream or whatever the hell I decide to do with that. I'll let you guys vote on some things, like times, because I live on the East Coast of the US, so I gotta try and find a live stream time that works for as many people as possible, so we'll figure that out. I got a lot of games installed, so it's probably be a lot to choose from, and it'll probably just be a chill little thing. Not too complicated. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time.